All right, so it's already 7:35 or 6:35 in Thailand's time. So I could go ahead to start off and kick off this talk. So again, thank you so much for spending this lovely evening with us to come down to hear this talk that is going to be given by a very special guest of ours, David Birnbaum. And he's going to talk about the future of the garment industry. And first things first, I would like to spend a couple of minutes to share with you a little bit more about TAFTC and also to introduce a little bit more about myself. So my name is Matthew Ong. I'm one of the program managers here at TAFTC, and my day-to-day responsibility covers having to assist students with their course admission, whether it's diploma courses or advanced certificate courses. They could come to inquire with us. And also we care a lot about our learners and students' outcome. And therefore, we always hope to help our students get better, whether it's trying to find a career in the industry or to adapt or to start their own fashion label. So I've been with the company for 3.5 years now. Some of you would have already known me. And some things that I like to do is I love to rock climb. So kudos for those who enjoy rock climbing just like myself. So a little bit about the company. We have established our roots since 1983. TAFTC is a private fashion school that offer fashion courses, and the goal that the government works with us is we are heavily subsidized. We are given a lot of grants to support the fashion industry and particularly the textile and fashion sector here in Singapore. So for those who are interested, just know that there are a lot of grants available for you, and you can always come to TAFTC for any form of training. So we have been partnering with a wide array of network. We have worked with all these companies that you see on your right. Some of them you would know of some of the brands like Charles & Keith and YKK and Coles as well. So at TAFTC, we will always try to organize networking events and also industry talks like this every once in 2 months, so that we can allow our students and also our corporates to also get themselves exposed to what may be lurking in the future. So at TAFTC, we have got 4 specialty programs. One is in the apparel design, and it's really focused on design and for people to navigate in wanting to learn virtual prototyping. And so apparel design is one specialty. Second is the fashion business specialty, where we are focused on supporting people who want to start their own fashion label. So we give them the tools to help them to do so. And last but not least, our footwear and also our bags making program, where we are the only school in Southeast Asia that provide the industry training on these programs. So our training comes in a couple of forms. One is our diploma immersive program, which can be as short as 4 months down to 11 months. And we do have our advanced certificate program and also our short courses too. So we have been training in more than 15 countries, sorry. And these are just some of the countries that we work with, and we are providing training and consultancy to these countries. This year, like Doreen and our trainers have been providing consultancy to United Nations, some of the garment manufacturers in Africa, the region of Africa. And our trainers, right? So our trainers have got at least 5 to 10 years of experience. That's one of the criteria of joining TAFTC. And so we believe that we need people to teach with conviction, and therefore our trainers can attest to that. So these are just some of the companies that our trainers work in. All right, now for the moment that we have been waiting for, I would like to spend some time to introduce David Birnbaum. And just to give you a background information of him, David Birnbaum is the 3rd generation garment specialist. He began his career as a pattern maker working in Hong Kong, and later rose to factory manager, and still later built factories in Asia and Latin America. In 1986, Birnbaum founded Third Horizon, a boutique operations designed to solve problems facing the industry and its stakeholders. More recently, he and his daughter set up Birnbaum and Father BNF, a consultancy specializing in the new 21st century industry. He has also lectured at leading universities throughout the world and conducted private seminars for major corporations, industry, and government. And therefore, with that, I like to pass my time over to David Birnbaum. Let's welcome him for the next segment. David Birnbaum, please.
Thank you, Matthew. The subject we're talking about this afternoon is product development and international manufacturing, an exercise in cost to value analysis. To be very frank, Matthew, can you go to the second slide? Matthew?
Yeah.
Can you go to the second slide? Slide 2?
This one?
Yeah, okay. Okay, we're looking here at a serious problem facing the industry. The difficulty we have is that our industry is going through a tremendous transition. That in the post-virus era, the industry will be indeed a new industry. The problems we face, in fact, are not the results of the virus, nor is it the result of recession. The problems that we face have been going on for at least 20 years. It is the recession and the virus that have brought this to the surface and has speeded up the process. Our difficulty is that our understanding of the industry and how it operates is terribly flawed. Matthew, you can go to the next slide.
Yep.
Okay. The problem is simple. The decisions we are making do not lead to the results we expect. You think about it, companies, retailers that have been in business 50, 100, would you believe 240 years in a matter of months have been flushed down the toilet? You think about it, our great geniuses on the retail side, Sir Philip Green from Acadia, Eddie Lampert from Sears, Kmart, have moved seamlessly from masters of the universe to dumb losers. Everything we have thought and understood about the industry seems to be falling apart. And the reason is that our perceptions are wrong. What I want to introduce you to this afternoon is a new perception, new way of looking at things. It's quite simple. Everything in our decision-making process has a cost. And every decision produces value. So if the value is greater than the cost, the decision is good. If the cost is greater than the value, the decision is pretty poor. Cost is determined by the supplier. It is what the supplier pays for materials, what the supplier pays for manufacturing. Value is about price. It is what the consumer or your customer is willing to pay. And value is difficult to calculate because it's quite personal. You go into a pharmacy to buy a tube of toothpaste. Do you really care what the Colgate people paid for the material? They paid for the manufacturing costs? Or do you want the toothpaste that you think is best for you? My assistant buys toothpaste based on taste. Okay. Other people buy toothpaste based on whitener. Other people want a more delicate toothpaste. Whatever you think is valuable, that's what you'll buy. What is true about toothpaste is about everything we do. You want to buy a car? Why would anybody spend $100,000 US to buy a Porsche automobile? To get from A to B? What is it that gives that value? Well, it's personal. A fellow comes from a modest family. And when he was young, he rode to school on his bike. And he was 12 years old, and the last part was going up this hill. And every morning, one of the kids in his class would zoom by, his father driving a red Porsche. And at 12 years old, this fellow said to himself, one day I'll be a success. When I'm a success, I have 100,000, I'm going to buy a Porsche. Now, another person hearing the story will think, you're out of your mind. You're going to spend $100,000 for a car? Do you know what sort of carpet you could buy for $100,000? A third person hearing the story says, you both have cases of arrested development. My daughter has just been accepted to Princeton University. You know how much that costs? For $100,000, I can afford 3 semesters for my daughter at Princeton University. Car, carpet, education, that's just personal value. In our work, if we're going to be successful, we have to decide, we have to determine what our customer values and give it to them. Can you go to the next slide? For example, most of us are brought up to believe what the consumer values is low price. And that to get the low price, we have to work in the places that have low labor costs and low FOB. That's the way forward. We believe this. It's not true. The data is entirely different. Matthew, the next slide, please. If you look at the list of the 10 greatest garment exporters in the world, China is first, EU is second. Together, they equal 58% of all garment exports. EU alone, with a 28 plus market share, exports more than the next 7. Exports more than the total of Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, Turkey, Indonesia, Cambodia, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And we can understand China. It has a great industry, it does very well. But the EU, we're talking about an industry where a worker is paid 20 times what the same worker is paid in Bangladesh, where the FOE prices are colossally higher. Next slide, please. You take a look at, you compare the FOE prices on products between China and the EU. They're anywhere between 1.5 times to 3.5 times. A men's cotton woven shirt is $6 out of China and $15 out of the EU. You go to a woman's dress out of China is $6.60 and $22. Why would a customer, why would a retailer or brand going to buy garments go to the EU and pay this tremendous premium? You have to, if you want to be a success, you have to understand the value because they are going. Can I have the next slide, please? The value comes from 2 things. Design. The EU, let's face it, is home to the greatest agglomeration of design centers. Italy, France, Spain, Netherlands, Sweden. A customer that's a retailer and a brand goes to the EU to buy garments because they want the EU design. They want the factory that can make that design. The EU, the same customer going to China brings his own designs. They're often of EU origin. But the most important thing is the brand. Let's face it, made in Italy, made in France, made in Spain. There's a cachet. The consumer will pay more money for that label than they will certainly for made in China, and certainly more than they'll pay for made in Bangladesh or made in India. There's a thing about it. Every place has factories that have problems. Excessive overtime, sexual harassment. These are problems that occur in a factory. But when it occurs in an Italian factory or a French factory, the consumer says, yes, this is terrible, but I know Italy, I know France, they'll solve the problem. The same problem occurring in Bangladesh or Cambodia or India, that same consumer will conclude, oh, I knew this all the time, bunch of crooks. There's a cachet for the factory located in Italy. You move that to Bangladesh and there's a cost. This is how value is developed. And if we want to work in the new industry, we have to provide the value. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. We have to redefine value. And I'm going to give you some examples. To do this, we need to recalculate both cost and value. Next slide. This is your basic cost sheet that everybody knows. It's fabric is 60%, the trim is 10%, the CM is 30%. CM is labor, overhead, and profit. This is the FOB price of $10. Everybody, I'm sure everybody has seen this many times. I want you to go ahead and look at the next slide. The $10 fashion garment will retail for between $60 and $80. Means that the actual percentage that is FOB is 17 to 25%. Why are we concentrating on the 17 to 25% and not on the other 75 to 83%? But it's more than that. In our garment sourcing world, the customer no longer goes to the factory to supply the fabric. They no longer go to the factory to get the trim. The customer goes directly to the bill, places the order, negotiates the price. They designate to the factory, you're going to use a YKK zipper, you're going to use a Freudenberg interlining, so that the only area of negotiation is the $3 CM. We're talking about less than 4 to 5% of retail. Why are we concentrating on the 4 to 5% and not the 94 to 95%? And finally, the truth is when you negotiate with a factory, the factory has a limit to what they can give you. They can't cut the labor cost. They can't go to the worker and say, well, the customer's not paying me any money, and therefore I want you to take a cut in wages. The worker gets more money, not less money. You can't go to the electric company or the telephone company and say, oh, business is bad. Could you reduce my electric bill? The only thing they can give you is the profit. That's 50 cents. That's it. We're talking about an amount that is less than 1% of the total retail price. Why are we looking at this 1% and not the other 99%? Okay. This is what a cost to value cost sheet. Can you change the slide? This is what a cost to value cost sheet looks like. It's a before and after. We're talking about on the left side, we're talking about what it was originally. On the right side, we're talking about what it is when the customer grabs your 50 cents. How much is the savings? Well, if you look at item 9, the factory profit, which was previously 50 cents, is now 0. Which means that there's a slight savings on the agent commission because the FOB price has gone down. So instead of 50 cents for the agent commission, it's 48 cents. And the duty has gone down also by about 8%. The customer has saved 61 cents. If the factory makes no money at all, the customer gets 61 cents back. Next slide. Okay, this is a chart of product development. Because if you want to provide value to the customer, you have to provide services. This is the first list of services. Today, in today's industry, product development is totally warped. Can you go down to the next slide? It begins with the designer. The designer does the initial design, but then hands the work over to the technical designer who changes the design based on fit and make, and then sends the work to the buying office overseas where the merchandiser changes the design to ensure the factory can produce the style. QA. And then the merchandiser sends it back to the home office where the brand manager either accepts the FOB price or rejects the FOB price, and in which case it's handed back to the technical manager who begins the redesign process over again. Next slide. This failure of design, the process is unbelievably costly. It's terribly time consuming. You've lost design integrity. Design integrity simply means that the sample looked like the designer's sketch and the stock looked like the sample. This is designed by committee. The result is lowest common denominator design, the one that fits the price rather than is something of interest to the customer, the consumer. The result is boring, is that these retail stores simply have boring styles. What happens if you move product development from the home office of the customer to the factory? New slide. Okay. Cost to value sheet, factory provides product development. You go down to item 6. For the factory to provide product development, there's a cost. We'll say 25 cents. So the total CM, which was $2, which was $2.50, is now $2.75. The total factory cost is now $9.75. The factory wants a profit. They're supplying service and they want 50 cents. So the net factory profit, which was 50 cents, is now $1. It's doubled. Okay. Well, the result is that the total FOB cost is now, item 11, $10.75 compared to $10 before. It means that the agent commission 12 goes up by 4 cents. It means that the duty goes up by 8 cents. The total DDP, the delivery duty paid price, where it was $12.62 previously, is now $13.53. But the product development savings. Product development is a very difficult thing to calculate because it is a fixed amount for the style. It doesn't matter whether you are producing 1,000 pieces or 1,000,000 pieces, the cost of product development remains the same. And therefore, the customer cannot actually calculate product development. The way they do it is they add a loading. They say, in this case, which is pretty normal, 20% of delivery duty paid price is going to go to product development. In this case, $2.52. If they transfer the product development to the factory, the only cost of product development would be the communication between the factory and the designer, maybe 25 cents. The net result is the customer saves $1.37. The factory does pretty well out of it, but the customer saves $1.37. Let's go to, skip the slide, go to the next slide saying the alternative. Do you see it? Okay. To transfer product development to the factory requires brand new skill sets. This is something that TAF would know about. One of the key factors in design is material sourcing. You have to find the right fabric at the right price for the style. Today, designers really don't understand material sourcing, which means that the designer has to learn about it, but the factory has to help them. It happens all the time. Product development specialist goes to the designer, and the designer hands them a swatch. And he said, the designer says, can you get me this fabric? And the smart product development specialist says, hold on for a second. Can you do me a favor and sketch a garment just to show me what you could use the fabric for? She sketches a garment. He says, you know something? This swatch will not make that garment. It seems soft, but only because 50 people have handled the swatch. It's too bawdy for you. I think what you need is wool challis. It's a soft fabric. It'll make the garment look really good. Unfortunately, I don't think your boss is going to go for wool challis, which is about €9 a meter. But I think they might go for 30% wool, 70% rayon, challis, which I can get, I think, for $5.50. You see the partnership. The designer is getting the right fabric, and we're beginning to engineer the style to fit the target price. The next thing, the designer has to have some understanding of quality assurance. After all, you're designing something that has to be made at some point in a factory, and you cannot send everything to Florence to manufacture. You have to go where you can, and so she must have some understanding of the factory process, working with the factory. We want to establish design integrity. This is a new concept for the world. The designer owns the style. If there's a change that has to be made because of QA, or if there's a change that has to be made because of the price, it is up to the designer to make the change. Because in the end, the sample has to look like the designer's concept, and the stock has to follow the sample. When you accomplish this, you have to quantify it. You have to show the value. And there's a way of doing this we've used in the past. There are two parts. One is the hit rate. That is the percentage of orders that the factory received from a particular customer that are based on this partnership of designer and factory. When we start this work with factories, maybe in the beginning you get 2% of the orders are actually follow this partnership. But within a year, that 2% becomes 60% or 70%. Why? Because of the sell-through. You can analyze the gross profit that the customer gets from the traditional relationship to the new partnership. And the customer will see that the profits have risen. And there's a reason for it, because the designer will start to learn what sells, what doesn't sell. The factory will begin to learn what the customer really wants. And together, this partnership, the customer makes the money, and the designer has a chance to create her skills. Okay, move ahead. We want to take cost of value, and we want to look at it in terms of international manufacturing. All right. To the people in the audience who run factories, everybody knows how the customer determines the right factory. They have a list of factors that the factory is supposed to provide: price, quality, reliability. There's a whole bunch of stuff. It could be 10 things, it could be 20 things. Then they carry out visits to the factory to rate the factory. They rate the factory. The maximum is 10, the minimum is 0, so that if you have 20 factors, the best score is 200, but 180 is a winning thing. That's where they get the factory, the business. The reality is that doesn't work. Why? Well, one thing, they send different inspectors to different factories. You have Tom, who's an easy guy. You have Dick, who's a little more discerning, and Harry, who's a real son of a bitch. So that Tom is very quick to give out a 200, to give out a 180, and Harry will give out a 50. The second problem is, who are these people? Who is Dick? And how is he related? Is he the nephew of the factory owner? There is a corruption that enters into this. And finally, the inspectors are working in a single country, while the customer might be working in 8 to 10 companies. The result is, let's face it, a 150 in Italy, we have some really great factories, is worth more than a 180 in Pakistan and a 200 in Bangladesh. And finally, what is this 180? Why is it better? How is it better than a 170? Every product is different. Some products, you have a problem. You have problems such as an overcoat. Another product is a T-shirt. You mean to tell me that the same factors for the T-shirt should be used for the overcoat? Why do we do this? Because we don't know any other way of doing it. Today, the major customers have programs where they give the same quantity of units to their factories every month. So once they've decided this, the program remains. And so when the branch office in India or Pakistan or Cambodia receives their bulk orders, they allocate it immediately based on the programs. This doesn't make any sense at all. If you look at it in terms of cost of value, you're going to see something different. New slide. There's only one factor that determines who should get the order. You want to work with the factory where you make the most money. That's not difficult. And the funny thing is you already have the data. You have all the orders. The customer has the orders, all the past orders. They have a detailed description of the product so that they can analyze it on a very actual opinion what the product is. They know which factory produced each product. You know the gross profit you derive from the product. You want to decide the best factory for a given product, you enter the details of the product description. The computer will tell you every factory that has ever made that product. The computer will tell you the average percentage profit for every factory, from every factory. I don't know why 180 is better than 170, but everybody in the world knows that a 53% profit is better than a 51% profit. And that's how you make your decisions. And with this, you have real flexibility. For the first time, the home office knows what's going on. You're not only comparing one supplier with another, you're comparing one country with another. Do you know that the average gross profit from India for us was 49%, while in Bangladesh was 52%? Why are we working in India when we should be working in Bangladesh? That's how you make the decisions based on reality. That's how you go with cost of value. You can see, you know something, this guy was doing so well last year. He was at 54%. Today, he's at 48%. What's going on? How do we go in and help the guy to find out what steps he has to take? On the other hand, you can see there are people, factories, that are superstars. You're making a fortune from them. You don't know why, but you see, this guy is great. You want to look around and see, why is he great? And how can I take those services that he's providing them and give them to my other factories? Everybody who runs a factory has the same moan. We can provide the new services, but the customers won't pay for them. But the reality is, if you have cost of value analysis, you can direct the services to profit. You're in a better position. Okay, I'll give you one last example. The greatest cost of the garment is the markdown. That is the difference between the price on the hang tag and the average price received after all sales and discounts. Why are goods marked down? Well, it's obvious they're marked down because they don't sell. The green sells, but the yellow and the blue don't sell. The small and medium sells, but the large and extra large, they die. The reason is it's part of the system. We live in an area of long lead times. If you want to design 40 weeks in advance, the chances of the designer being able to produce interesting goods that sell is very remote. So if you move the product development to the factory, you foreshorten the time, now you're designing close to the sale. That gives it off. But it's more than that. The factory has to develop services. The greatest of these is speed to market. Factories today, if they're good, their lead times 30 days. Some people are 40 days, 45 days. You want to be at 6 days, and you can do it. The technology exists. If you can have 6 days, then you've opened a whole world to your customer. In today's world, the customer, because of the long lead times for design and the long lead times for the production, the customer has to take all the fabric and cut it up on day one. But if you have speed to market, the customer can get trial orders. Trial orders is where you take your fabric, you design 10 styles, and you ship in trial orders. You ship in small quantities of each of the 10 styles, depending on your size. If you're Zara, you ship in 2,000 pieces of a style because you have 7,000 stores. You place those trial orders in the stores that you trust best. And you see what sells. After 3 or 4 days of the 10 styles, if 4 styles sell, that's where you go. If 3 styles sell, if nothing sells, you redesign. Zara is successful because they design after sales. The weirdest thing, they know what will sell before they put their money up for production. You need trial orders, you need fast turn to move goods 6-7 days. But you also need quick response. Quick response is they're telling you what's selling. You're producing goods in 5 or 6 days. You're putting the reorder into an airplane, pay the air freight, and you're shipping it in. It means that the retailer doesn't have to have big inventory, and his goods are used for the things that sell. That is the secret. It takes real skills from the factory and real cooperation with the customer. Go to the next slide. This is the cost of value cost sheet for markdown reduction. Start off at item 5. In order to have reduced markdowns, you have to have transferred the product development. And so the factory costs will go up by 25 cents. In order to have the reduced markdown, you need the services. You need the quick response, you need the fast turn, the speed to market. It might cost the factory $2. So it means that the CM, the total cost, which was originally $250, is now $475. The total factory cost, factory cost was $950, is now $1175. Now they have to give you profit. They have to give you profit because you have achieved markdown reduction. Let's see, $1.50. That's big money. You add to that the 50 cents additional profit you got from product development. You're now the factory where the factory was originally earning 50 cents. They're now earning 5 times that. They're earning $2.50. It means that the FOB price, item 12, has gone from $10 to $16.25. And naturally, the agent's commission, 13, has gone up, the duty has gone up. The net result is the DDP, which originally was $12.50 or so, is now over $20. Well, you save money on the product development loading, which was $2.52, is now 40 cents. And in the end, the in-store cost was a little under $16. It's now a little over $21. Assume that the retailer, that your customer wants to make all the money, doesn't want to give anything back to the consumer. And so the markup is still $47. The retail price is now $63. The markdown, though, which was originally 35%, which, by the way, is the average markdown for fashion goods in the department store in the United States, the markdown, which is $22, is now $6.31. 26, item 26, the net profit, which was $25, is now over $35. The net profit for reducing markdown was more than the original FOB price. It is as if the factory was not getting paid at all. You were making $10. The factory, on the other hand, is making 5 times what they would have made normally. At this point, services really work. We're going forward. Okay, skip the next slide and go to the cost-saving strategies. This is an analysis of what we've been talking about. Sorry. If you go for FOB price reduction, you save the customer saves 61 cents and the factory loses 50 cents. If you go to product development, if you transfer product development, the customers earned $1.37 and the factory earns $1. Their profit is doubled. But if you can get markdown reduction, the customer makes $10. That's the real saving. And the factory does really well at this at $2.50. The question is, this is sheer mathematics. This works. Why don't people do it? This is an interesting problem. Can you go to the next slide? It's called opportunity cost. Every decision leads to choices. To go, not to go with A or not to go with B. The problem is that the guy who just wants to reduce FOA price will say, I don't care what you say, I'm saving 61 cents. That's real saving. That's money in the bank, my 61 cents. The problem, and he's right, by the way, it is real saving. The problem is the opportunity cost. No matter what you do, whether you go this way or you go the other way, you're going to make the customer is going to save money. But by going with A, just fighting the factory, they make 61 cents. On the other hand, they could have saved $10. They made money in both cases, but the opportunity of going with the cost with the markdown reduction, the opportunity there is $10 compared to 61 cents. Yes, you were made 61 cents, and that's something you could have made $10. People have yet to see this. But the industry itself is going through a tremendous shakeout. And unless you're agile, unless you understand the need for services and the ability to provide those services, you're in trouble. New slide. Our industry has many problems. This is the only industry I know in the world where you can buy for one, sell for two, and go broke. This is the only industry I've ever heard of where people, stores, brands actually burn garments because it's cost effective to burn the garments. I mean, we have no idea what's going on in our own industry because we have no idea of what's real and what's not real. That's the state we have. We have a technology myth. Strategic applied minutes. How many of us have ever heard of SAM? SAM is a means of determining how many minutes it takes to produce a garment. It starts off with a guy in back of the machine with a stopwatch. And you count the number of minutes it takes, to do that. You do it a number of times. You say, oh, operation A requires 2 minutes. Okay, and puts that down. You get the sum total of all the operations together, and you say this garment required 18.5 minutes, for argument's sake. And with that, we can we can look at the labor costs. With that, we can plan our production, we can plan our scheduling. The problem is that SAM is a myth. You run a factory, and you understand something about the line. You understand that, for example, the line can only produce one order at a time, because when you finish the order, you have to stop production to adjust the line. You have, to change the arrangement of machinery, so that this is the time that's lost. Now that's at the same time, you have a period where you have a learning curve. You produce a new style. In the beginning, the line doesn't produce sufficiently. It takes time, maybe a half day. Also, you have a 60 machine line and you feed garments in, you don't have 60 machines working at the same time. The goods have to go through the line. All of these things take time. The funny thing that you have to understand is they all take the same time, regardless of the size of the order. So that the added cost is a factor of how many garments is the order. Standard allowed minutes is 100 years old. It was created by Henry Ford. in his famous Model T factory. The Model T factory was created to produce the same style 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year forever. So the costs of changing the line, the cost of the learning curve, all those costs were negligible because the factory is going to work forever. We transferred this concept to the industry when Levi Strauss produced the 501 jeans. And the 501 jeans factory, which is located in the United States, was the same thing as the Model T Ford. It was designed to produce the same style 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year forever. And it did for a long time until it didn't. And what killed the line, what killed the factory is the advent of design. Henry Ford's famous concept, the Model T Ford, you can buy it any color you want as long as you want black. Everybody has to have the same thing. The 501 jeans, it's all the same because they were selling work clothes. And as a result, that Henry Ford or the Ford company had to start designing cars. You design cars, you have the same problem with the car that you have with everything else. The line has to stop for every new line. And the terrible thing about Levi Strauss is they never understood the advent of designer jeans. They thought they would buy the jeans forever. And they almost did. You know, in the end, they were operating, I think they were at $7 billion, which at the time, they were the largest garment company in the world. The next year, they fell to $6 billion and $5 billion because they didn't understand that jeans were designed. And if you have designer products, the line has to change. These are things that people have to understand. People talk about lean manufacturing, and I tell you, lean manufacturing is great. But we have made a mockery of it. I know people who are going to Bangladesh and saying, I'm offering you lean manufacturing, but you don't have to give the worker empowerment. You don't have to train the workers. You have the label lean manufacturing. But it doesn't work. And lean manufacturing today is used primarily in countries that are producing commodity goods based on cheap labor that are semi-skilled. It is an excuse not to train new workers, not to improve conditions. We think that technology is an automatically a step forward. If you're a woman, or you have a girlfriend, or you have a sister who has an interest in vintage clothing, let her talk about the fit. And she will tell you the fit of the garment made in 1980 was better than anything she can buy in a store today. Ask her, it's true. Why? Because originally pattern making in 1980 was a skill set. It was in some degrees an art form. Today it's computerized. And you can't get the shape you want on a computer yet. Technology is very important. I mean, I have projects that 5 years ago would never have been possible. We publish the Birnbaum report every month, which is 100+ pages of data. This is important. You know, we are looking to take cost of value analysis and make a computer model out of it. But you cannot simply say technology is the answer. You have to understand the industry. You have to understand the skill set. You have to understand what you're doing. Also, you have to understand the soft costs. You can't just think of the cost sheet as material and trim and labor and overhead. You have to understand there are these soft costs. Quality is a cost on both sides. You can understand that Levi Strauss cannot produce jeans in a factory for Giorgio Armani. That's the cost of killing. On the other hand, Giorgio Armani cannot produce goods in the jeans factory for Levi Strauss. Why? Because the quality is different. also because the quantities are smaller. There is a cost to good quality. The most famous case of quality is the Gap. The Gap was a denim reseller in the 1990s until they brought in a man named Mickey Drexler, who was one of the great merchants of all times. And he took the Gap and transformed it into a concept of no fashion, but extremely well-designed, well-made clothing at premium prices. And by 2000, 2001, the Gap was the largest garment retailer in the United States. For a reason they have to go into, in 2002, they got rid of him. And they brought in, to run the Gap, they brought in a person who had knowledge of retail because he was in the toy business. And they looked at this and they said, this just losing money here for no reason whatsoever. You don't have to give people a Rolls Royce when they'll buy a Ford. You don't have to have this great fabric. You can reduce the quality of the fabric a little bit. You don't have to work in these premium factories. You can work in another factory. One of the things they teach you in business school is that if you increase volume, your profit might go up 6%. Because the added profit. If you reduce costs by $1, your profit is $1. The place to make money is to reduce costs. And so they reduced costs. And it worked. 2003 was a good year. 2004 was a great year. 2005, things fell apart. Why? Because you have a reputation. And even if you have your reputation, it's a good reputation, it'll continue on your reputation for a period. The customers are a little upset, but they think, well, I've been workshopping there for 10 years, but eventually they give up. And when they give up, they don't come back. And that's what happened to the Gap. Gap has never returned to their position that they had in 2003. There was a time when they were just this astronomically successful company. Some years, about last year, they decided that they were going to sell Old Navy, which was their most profitable division. Nobody would buy it because Gap doesn't have the name in the industry. We are dealing not just with the positive problems of soft costs, we're dealing with the negative problems. Sustainability. The problem with sustainability is that no consumer is going to buy your product because it's sustainable. I'm sorry, it's true. But there's a certain percentage of consumers, maybe just 10%, who will not buy your product if it's unsustainable. Just like there are people who will not buy your product if they hear the factory has child labor. There's nobody who wants unsustainability. There's nobody who wants child labor. Most of the people don't care. The people who do care are people who want these values. So that the retailers today want to be sustainable because they don't want to lose 10%. That's how it's, and we have to, in our cost, we have to quantify this. What is the cost of being unsustainable? It's like fire insurance. You can have a house and you can own the house and pass it to your children, your grandchildren, and pay fire insurance for 100 years and never have a fire. Chances are it will happen. Of course, if you have a fire, you're wiped out. So you pay insurance because if the impossible happens, at least you're covered. If you want to define our industry, today, the consumers, the term is acquired cynicism. They don't believe anything. They've been lied to and cheated for so many years. The fact that you advertise means that you're the enemy because you're lying to people. That's why they have people they trust. If you want to be successful, you have to persuade the consumer over a period of time that you are acting honestly. If there's a problem, 4 years ago, Target had a problem. Target does a very good job in bed linen. And the bed linen is is listed as Egyptian cotton. When blockchain came into common usage, Target signed on and they discovered, oh my God, it's not really Egyptian cotton. They contacted every single person for, I don't know, forever, who ever bought bed linen and explained to them the problem. And it cost them several millions of dollars. They offered replacements, whatever you wanted. But they walked away with an unblemished reputation. Can you imagine what would have happened if 10 years goes by and some guy who graduates from Taft decides for his doctorate degree that, oh, I want to analyze the cotton that goes into bed linen. It's not unreasonable because percal is very fine cotton. And they discovered, oh my God, this is not Egyptian cotton. There's a DNA for Egyptian cotton. That would have cost in cash hundreds of millions of dollars. Target saved that money. And in doing so, they acquired a reputation of this is somebody we can trust. That's how the industry is changing. That's how we have to move ahead. You put on a slide. Okay, I'm sorry I did that. Are there questions? Please. Any questions? Hello?
All right, does anybody have questions for David? David, we have Doreen, our CE, that is also in the session as well, and I think we will get a couple more questions. So Doreen Tan, one of our audience, have a question. Her question is, what is expected lead time from design to first prototype?
Very good. You know that in Inditex, in Zara, it's 2 days. This is really interesting. It's true. Inditex doesn't design. What they have is access to everything in the world, all the windows in the world, all the shows in the world, and they have people there who are taking these photographs and putting to the computer. And then have people in another room who are taking the photographs, they're looking at particular fabrics that are coming in, and they're taking the photographs and they're deciding which style is the best style, and they're putting together 10 styles. They're putting together 10 styles so that when the fabric arrives, in 2 days, they can have the line. For the most part, for the rest of us, the time between first sketch and completed sample should be no more than 21 days. That's after the fabric. That's after you have fabric.
All right, and a second question is, what is your view on virtual prototyping?
I think these models might be the future. I think you have a long way to go. You know, this is the problem we have. You know, there is a possibility, for example, that in the future, through artificial intelligence, we'll be able to determine what the consumer will buy, what the consumer wants. Okay. But Zara determined this 40 years ago with trial orders. Virtual prototyping is a way forward, but it will, I think that the real change is going to take place in the pure play e-commerce people, because they're looking for individuality. They're looking to produce something special, and it's being done mostly by hand. I mean, that's my view.
Gotcha. Thanks, David. And maybe one last question. Where do you see, because this talk is about the future of the garment manufacturing, so where do you see the garment industry moving in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's when I was at school, they would have a question is to explain the universe in 25 words and give 2 examples. Okay, I think we're in for a real change. I think that the orders are going to get smaller. The industry is going to get smaller, by the way, because we've seen for a long time that people are spending a smaller percentage of their disposable income on clothing. How people will be affected by the shutdown is interesting. I think that people are going to be looking for fewer, more interesting garments. I think that the retail people, the brick and mortar people, have to reinvent themselves, or else they're going to be out of business. And they can, by the way. There are models that would work. I mean, let's face it, there is an advantage of being able to go into the store, feel the garment, and try it on. I think that we are going to the commodity business is going to take a big drop. Are you familiar with Target?
Yeah.
All right. Target was started as a mass market commodity seller. It was started years ago by a department store called Dayton Hudson. They reinvented themselves. You can go to Target today and get really interesting design. It's really it's well made, and it's slightly above mass market price. The interesting thing, and I wrote about this, the interesting thing is that people, more, higher income people, women who had never stepped foot in a Walmart in their lives, during this lockdown, were having their children tell them how they can order from Target online, because it's interesting clothes, and you can see it's just not clothing. The first thing that moves in this area is body care and skincare products, because the fashion people are charging a fortune for what is basically kitchen chemistry. And these people, there are people today, influencers who rate the stuff. Anything you find out, you compare one product with another, and they say people like Target are doing very well. That's the future. The future is that the people from every income group are interested in something special. And I think that's going to be the change. I think you have to accept smaller orders. I think you have to move faster. I think that you have to, I think there are things you can do to move forward. Have you ever thought of branding a factory?
No.
Okay, listen, look at it this way. Sustainability is a big thing. But when the retailer or the brand talks about sustainability, it's not talking about their being sustainable. They're talking about the factory is sustainable. They're not talking about child labor, in New York City. They're talking about child labor, in South Asia.
Yeah.
There's another side to this. If you're a factory, you're a legitimate factory, you're producing a legitimate product, well, why don't you start developing your brand? Why don't you go on? Why don't you take some influencers and have them come visit you and just let them see everything? That's the next step. Anyway, that's some ideas.
Great. Awesome, man, David. And maybe a last question, where can people find you? And maybe you want to talk more about this book of yours to our audience.
Okay. Cost of value analysis is the model that we're talking about. It's the model that takes the cost of something and the value of something, puts it together. It is a model that we can use in our work to make the right decision. It really is actually, you come down to the culmination of maybe 30 years work. It's the work that we're doing from this looks like we're going to change the industry. The way we are using computers today, PLN, things of this sort, they don't work well. This is a way forward. And if you are a professional and you're looking to see where we're going and how you can take advantage of this in the future, perhaps the guide to cost of value analysis might be interesting. You can buy it through Amazon, both the hard copy and the Kindle. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your time, David. Again, the access to the recording of today's talk will be available, and we also put the link to David's book in our later EDMs going out to those who have missed this talk. And again, watch out for TAFTC's social media, because we're gonna post more future talks where we have got more audiences going to join us soon. Yes. All right. Again, thank you so much for your time, David, and I wish you a pleasant evening ahead.
Thank you, Matthew. Bye.
Take care, David. Yep. See you. Bye-bye.